Welcome back, casual gardeners. This video is about possibly the most amazing annual plant for pollinators that you have never heard of. It is my favorite Native American wildflower. Although if you live somewhere else in the world, there are going to be some more domesticated cultivars that will still work for you. This video is going to be a lot like a recipe on the internet. There's a big long story in the front that you probably don't care about, but I hope you watch it anyway. And then all the information's in the back. And I'm doing that on purpose because I just want to tell the story, and it's my birthday next week, so I'm going to tell the story. I don't know what year it was. It was in the mid-20 teens. We hadn't bought a house yet, so we didn't have a garden per se. I did have a half-barrel planter on my north-facing balcony that we were growing tomatoes in, gosh darn it. My wife and I decided that we would travel down to Cedar City, Utah, where they have an annual Shakespeare festival, because I'm that kind of nerdy guy, and so is she. Not except for the guy part. She's not a guy. We went to Cedar City. We enjoyed the Shakespeare festival. Forsooth, it were amazing. And then we decided while we were down there that we would explore a spot called Old Iron Town, which is a really cool old ghost town from when the Mormon settlers who came to this state, they wanted to mine and smelt their own iron so they could be self-sufficient, because this was originally going to be its own country. And so they established Iron Town, where they had iron, and they built these big smelters there that are still standing today, and you can still see the soot on the inside. It's really cool. You can walk into the ovens that they were using, and there's assorted old wreckage and foundations and things. And if you can, if you're in the Cedar City area, travel to Old Iron Town and check it out, just because it's so cool. It's a little piece of history that you can walk through and touch. So we're exploring these old Iron Town ruins, and it's red. Everything's red and everything's dead, and there is no redemption. I think that's a video game reference. I don't know. I don't play the game. But anyway, it's quiet because there's very little active because it's the daytime. In the desert, most of the life is crepuscular, which means it comes out at dawn and dusk. And you got a few nocturnal things, and during the day, most stuff is just hiding from the sun and trying not to dry out. So it's barren and quiet, and there's sagebrush, and there are cacti, and some dead native grasses, and not a lot else, plant-wise. We don't hear any insects, and we don't hear any birds, and we're wandering through these ruins, and we come across a big, tall, beautiful plant. It had to have been at least 5 feet tall, and the trunk on it was like this big around. And the branches of it were extending out at the height of the plant in every direction. It was just this big, it looked like a small tree to us, or a medium-sized shrub. And at the tip of every branch was covered with just long panicles of these brilliant pink flowers. Whereas everything all around this plant was silent and unalive, this plant was humming. There were bees, there were wasps, there were moths, there were butterflies, there were hummingbirds, just surrounding this plant in a cloud, almost like something out of a fairy tale. And the distinct difference between the arid landscape and this oasis for pollinators was magical. And I cannot express the experience very well. And I've kind of wondered, am I remembering this correctly? Did it really happen this way? So we took pictures because we wanted to identify this plant, because we were both entranced by it. Eventually we found out what it was, and it is the Rocky Mountain bee plant, or the scientific name is Cleome cerulata. Cleome cerulata. That's probably the correct pronunciation. About a year later, my wife and I bought our first house, and we decided that we would return to Old Iron Town and see if we could find that plant and collect seeds from it so that we could take the seeds home with us and always have that plant with us because it was such a magical memory. And that's one thing I really like about saving seeds that doesn't get a lot of people don't talk about it as much. We talk about how it saves you money, and we talk about how it saves diversity and all of that practical crap. But one thing I love about saving seeds is that it connects us to gardens and experiences in our past and allows us to carry those with us into the future. So it's a very physical way to it's like a living scrapbook. And call me sentimental, but I think that's actually the coolest thing about saving seeds. The Rocky Mountain bee plants that I have in this garden are direct line related to the Rocky Mountain bee plants that I had in my first flower garden in my first home, are direct line related to the population of Rocky Mountain bee plants that live at Old Irontown. So in that way, my garden is tied to that adventure. Now I'm gonna get to the actual information. If you've made it this far, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to my channel because you're enough of a glutton for punishment that I think you'll enjoy my channel. Right, so as I said earlier, the primary common name is Rocky Mountain bee plant. The Latin name or scientific name is Cleome cerulata, and that's good for you to know if you want to go and find more information about this plant on your own, or if you want to actually find some seeds, which is actually pretty easy to do if you're looking for them. This flower begins blooming in the late spring in most climates and will continue to bloom until the first frost, when that gets knocked down. It will not survive the frost. It is an annual. If you live somewhere warm enough that you don't get frosts, I have no idea what it'll do. Let me know in the comments. This flower is native to most of North America, from the southern Canadian provinces all the way down to Mexico, and excluding just a few of the eastern states. But the rest of North America, it's its native range. I'm in the native range for this flower, so I'm planting native plants. The advantage of growing native plants is that your native pollinators are going to recognize them more readily and see them as food and get a benefit from it. This flower is also naturalized in the rest of the contiguous United States. So all of those eastern states that it's not native to, it is now naturalized to. You will find it all over. This plant was first collected for Western science during the Lewis and Clark expedition. And I'd like to imagine that they were as impressed by it as I was, but probably not. It is very drought tolerant. You may not need to water it at all in most climates. If you're in Death Valley, of course, water everything. But I mean, here, if I didn't want to water my Rocky Mountain bee plant, I probably could get away with not doing it. As I mentioned earlier, there is no pollinator this plant will not attract. It is just amazing. It is the most promiscuous pollinator plant I've ever seen. And not only is it beneficial for pollinators, but the seeds, of which it makes thousands per plant, are beneficial for small birds and doves. So it's an important food source for birds and pollinators, and both of those can be really great things to have in the garden for, controlling pests and making fruit. There are some related plants, like if you're in Europe, you probably aren't going to have a lot of access to Cleome cerulata, but you will have other Cleomes that you can buy. There is a very popular tropical version called the spider flower, and it is the same genus. Tropical ones range in color from white through pink and into shades of almost purple. They're quite lovely. There is also another native North American Cleome called Cleome lutea that has vibrant yellow flowers. Its range is a lot more limited. It doesn't expand all the way to the western coast, and it doesn't expand into the east. It's just in the western states. So I have the good fortune of sharing my climate with cerulata and lutea. And also, because they are different species, you can grow both of them and get two colors from the same looking plant, and they won't cross-pollinate and get all weird on you. While there are tropical varieties, if you live in North America, I would recommend that you try to grow a native variety. And the reason for that is that it's going to grow better for you. It's going to require less care. I mean, the tropical varieties are kind of insanely easy to care for as well, but this one is going to be even more drought tolerant and carefree. And I mean, that's a tremendous benefit. So let's talk about how to grow this flower, if I've gotten you interested. Once these are established in your garden, they're really easy to get to reseed on their own. This is something that you plant once and then you're actively thinning it for the rest of your life. It's such a prolific plant. However, its tiny, tiny seeds are really difficult to get established initially. The reason it does well after it's established is because it's going to drop tens of thousands of seeds all over the place. And of course, just by dumb luck, at least one of those is going to grow the following year. So you're set. But most of the time when we're just getting a population established in our garden, we're not going to have tens of thousands of seeds to drop where we want it. We're going to have a few hundred, and it's not going to go as great. There are ways to make it go better. Now, each population of the same species will have a different preferred germination temperature depending on where you are. And it's really difficult to know what those are going to be without doing some extensive research. So you can save yourself some effort by doing a winter stratification outdoors. Cold stratification will also improve your germination. So in addition to just being outside when the optimal temperature comes around, because as things thaw, you're going to transition through all the temperatures, and no matter what temperature it wants, you're going to hit that sweet spot. But it also will improve the germination of all of the seeds. And I prefer to do my cold stratification in pots. So what I'll do is I'll fill a relatively large pot. You want it at least a 5-inch diameter pot, because it's going to shoot down a taproot right away. That's why they're drought tolerant. So you can take your pot and you're going to sprinkle your seeds on it. And in the fall, when the first snow comes, I like to just take a bunch of snow and pack it over the pot. And then I ignore it for the rest of the season. I leave it somewhere that is relatively sheltered, where it's not going to get blown away and it's not going to get dried out by too much sun, but it still gets good sun exposure and good exposure to the elements so it can stratify properly. And when spring rolls around, you're going to see these shoots appear in your pot. My recommendation, because you can transplant it, but it doesn't always transplant well, is to, as soon as it starts to come up, plant it where you want it. Use any kind of potting soil, as long as it's got some fine structure, because these are tiny seeds that require good contact with the soil to germinate. These plants are adaptable to poor soils. So anything from sand to heavy clay. They're tolerant of high salinity levels. I've seen them growing out around the Great Salt Lake, where it's quite salty, saltier than my language during rush hour. And it's fine, it's beautiful, it's happy there. But that being said, they will happily accept supplemental fertilization and additional watering if you want to give it to them. If you really want to give them an extra chance to get big and beautiful in your garden, go ahead and feed them and water them. I have never bothered to fertilize mine, and they've always looked amazing. And that is about everything I know about Cleome serrulata. If you have not liked this video yet, come on, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel. If you have any questions about this flower, drop them down in the comments. I do want to say, so that you don't come back and yell at me later, my little sister, on my recommendation, tried growing this flower, and it was so successful in her garden that she was very upset, because she ended up having to clear seedlings out of her sidewalk cracks and out of her gravel areas and out of her garden beds. It did grow everywhere. So this is something that you may not want to put too close to your vegetable beds. If you've got a wild or weedy spot out where you're just kind of letting things happen and having a lot of fun and just chaos gardening, it's going to be better there. That is all about Cleome serralata, my favorite annual pollinator plant. Thank you so much for joining me here in my garden today. I hope you have a wonderful time in your own garden.